My name's Simon Crawley-Trice. I head up our strategy and transformation services for Rackspace and EMEA. Bit of background about myself, been in IT about 20 years, pretty much done every role from being a support guy, run support and operations teams, physically moved data centers from one location to another. Been an architect for a long period of time, junior all the way up to senior. A strategist for a couple of years where I've been trying to help customers solve their problems and align that to an IT strategy. So it's really good, because I've been, going across many different types of customers. I'm also joined by Adam Evans. I wonder if you can do a quick intro.
Yeah, hi, thanks Simon. My name's Adam Evans. I run the professional services function that supports our EMEA customer base out of the UK. And I've been with Rackspace for about 2 years. I'm a program manager by trade. Before I joined Rackspace, I was a consultant in that space for about 6 years. And prior to that, I spent about 6 years in the telco space. We've also got joining us Simon Hall, who is the director for the UK and Ireland for EMC's professional services function. Simon will join us at the end for any Q&A because we're going to have some conversations that will focus around how we and our partners work together.
Thanks, Adam. So what we're going to do is pretty much take you through a journey. This is pretty much from the experience that we've garnered working with various customers. We're going to start with why change, what's going on in the market, what's causing disruption in that area. We're going to look at, where do you begin? How do you understand your IT maturity and where it is today? How does IT become a service broker to the business? Then we're going to talk about how do we understand what you've got today within your data centers and help design the right technology of choice that feeds in to a low risk and governed transition. We're managing over 200,000 customers. We help customers onboard and transition into Rackspace on a regular basis. So we're going to talk around that, mainly focused around how do we get you out of your existing data centers. Then we're going to talk around transformation. It means different things to different businesses. So we're going to talk that through at the end. I'm going to touch on a Lowe's case study right at the end because we've helped a customer called Lowe's who are, a financial services management company, and they very much started from a sprawled estate to coming into Rackspace end to end. So let's look at why change. So fundamentally, you've probably heard this at various events, but reality is industry and businesses are being redefined and redisrupted. Basically, what's happening, you've got businesses that are born in the cloud, the Airbnbs and the Ubers of the world, who have only been running sort of 7-8 years, but they're very agile, they're built around DevOps, they can adjust and scale on demand. So if something changes in the marketplace, they're able to shift really quickly. Then you've got the Internet of Things, which I class as new business opportunities effectively, because there's a new way of collecting data, analysing that, and then making intelligent business decisions off the back of that. And then mobile. We know mobile is changing the world in the way people use it. We know Uber and Airbnb, rely on their applications. It's not because they've got a really cool website, it's because their application's easy to use. And there's an interesting stat that I picked up a couple of weeks ago that by 2020, 7 billion people are expected to be connected. But there'll be over 30 billion devices. So we all know that we carry sort of 4 or 5 devices as a result. Then wearable technology is also changing user experience. Hands up who's been to Disney in the US? Okay. Did you utilize the Magic Band?
Very good, yeah.
Yes, so fundamentally, wearable technology is pushing the boundaries around users' experience. It's raising the bar. Disney have a band that you can put on your arm, you can pay systems, check into hotels, they know where you are in the park. It's a great customer experience. So with all these forces, it's increasing, which means from a competitive nature, if you're competing against that, you've got to respond, and it's how quick you can respond. Interesting stat that from sort of EMC world a couple of weeks ago is that since 1955, 89% of the Fortune 500 companies are no longer here. And that's because that's as a result of mergers, acquisitions. And we know with this biggest disruption of these new things coming to the table, business is going to go out of business, as a result of that. On the other side, in the traditional world, we've got these challenges where CIOs are encouraged and sort of to drive business revenue and drive that top line. However, we know from my conversations that I've had where IT teams have large backlogs of projects. There's one customer that had 200 projects in their backlog. So backlogs of projects are not being measured in weeks or months, they're being measured in years, which is a real challenge. Then you've got the other challenge of Gartner talk about that if you're running your data centers today, 70% of your time is just going to be keeping that operational running of that data center. And only 30% can be led towards driving that innovation. So where do you find time on that previous slide to focus on those things? The other areas which is the biggest concern, is around controlling compute, controlling where your data is, controlling how you maintain compliance. This is a real issue around shadow IT, and Gartner predicts that in 2015, 35% of IT expenditure will be outside of the business, which is putting huge risk to any business. And we certainly see this is really relevant when people are running their DCs today. So fundamentally, IT needs to run two support modes. So they need to keep their existing platforms that drive, stable and are very reliable, that really does drive business value. And then you've got to balance it with the new platforms of the world, the lot more flexible and agile platforms, which really is generated around the digital business. So what this sums down to when you're looking at both those things is, and the challenge you're going to find when you're running your own data centers is, Taylor touched on this earlier, is finding the expertise. I know as a leader, trying to find expertise for Rackspace is very difficult. Not only is to find them, it's to train them and it's to maintain them. So what you need is to find a wide range of evolving skill sets. Also, technology is becoming fairly complex. There are so many choices out there. If you look at the big data, for example, I don't know if you've seen a slide, that you could hardly see the logos of choices there. And it's evolving rapidly, so it's making the right choice now that's going to be suitable for the future. So the concept around this is adopt the right technology for today that can evolve in the future. Then flexibility. The days of having 5-7 year contracts are going away. You're going to need flexibility in contracts that's going to enable you to shift and change. Also, you're going to need different delivery methods that's going to support the business. Some are going to need to be more agile, some are going to need to take a bit longer. And then the flexibility of the SLAs to support those business needs. The last one is really the governance. It's about regaining control and reducing shadow IT. We know shadow IT is a real issue, and if you're running your DCs today and you can't deliver services to your business units and your lines of business, they're going to consume cloud services and you've lost control. So it all sounds doom and gloom, but we're here to take you through how we can help solve some of those things. So first of all, if we look at strategy, so strategy for me is that early conversation to understand what is your business goals and objectives, and to create that vision going forward. First area we like to understand is where you are on the IT maturity roadmap effectively. Now, when I speak to execs and various customers, everyone wants a copy of this slide because everyone in this room and every business can relate to where they are on this IT maturity roadmap. So on the far left, I think that's the left, you've got the sprawled estates, ad hoc. We find that these businesses have been running their DCs for years, they've grown rapidly, they've found a lack of time to make changes, so you get these sprawled estates. If you start to move up the stack, if you're running your DCs today, you've probably virtualized them, you've realized the benefits of that CapEx reduction, but then the next step is, how do I drive further from that? How do I drive operational efficiency? So customers come to people like Rackspace and various other vendors to drive that operational efficiency and switch that operating model from 70% previously running it to 70% driving innovation. So let someone else worry about that. Next stage is building automation and building business agility. And I'm going to talk through how Louds have got to this point where they've come from running a sprawled state and have got to the point where now they've freed up their team's time to focus on real business agility. The holy grail is obviously driving competitive advantage. It's IT running as a service provider and it's becoming a service broker to the business. So I'm going to talk about that a bit more in a minute. Fundamentally, when I speak to customers, and this is quite common, all this seems simple, to understand the business and IT at these different levels, I see a lot of businesses still having a disconnect. It's absolutely vital that the business and IT understand what the business goals and priorities are and how IT can support those. So, what is the plan for the next 1 to 2 years? How are you going to measure how successful that is? And from an IT perspective, how does IT support those top priorities and goals? I've asked many IT teams and they don't know this. So you've got an issue that you're not driven in the same direction. And then understand what the drivers are. Is it you driving competitive advantage? Or is there a change of products? Or is there new markets that you need to go in? So I ask people to go away and sort of, if you're an IT leader or you're a CXO, make sure you're aligned because you're going to be really successful if you are. The other piece is the shift around IT's new delivery model. It's IT becoming a service broker to the business. It's building out a service catalogue and automation and creating a single pane of glass to the business units and lines of business. By doing this, you'll enable the reduction of not only shadow IT, but a way to consume these. Reality is you're going to consume multiple service providers as a result of this. So you're going to have SaaS providers like Salesforce. You're going to have infrastructure as a service providers like Rackspace. You're going to have digital providers. But the key thing is creating those two single panes of glass, one to your business line units and your business units so they consume your services, and then have a multiple selection of services that supports that. That means that IT is regaining control and it's reducing risk. Now, this is not something you just go away tomorrow and it happens. This happens over sort of 1 or 2 year period. So if you looked at the previous slide, that to drive competitive advantage, you've got to enable IT to be a service broker to the business. So all those things leads into, once you've got the vision, what we need to do is validate that vision. So we need to validate it via discovery and design. So effectively what we do is aggregate all that information across understanding your capacity today. What have you got in your state? How's that consumed? Then it's understanding hotspots. Everyone has hotspots. Why are they hotspots? How are they consumed from that perspective? Then we talk about how to consolidate. Most customers that we engage with today that are running their own data centers will probably be about 20-30% utilised because they built for the peaks. That they may never have achieved it, but there's a huge consolidation opportunity there. And then what can be retired? We know people running their own data centers may have invested in expensive kit that they're trying to write off over time, so we work out what needs to be retired. From an inventory perspective, it's validating your configuration management database. You may be running off a spreadsheet. We've got a lot of spreadsheets that are sent across to us. We help validate what that looks like. What do you actually have within that environment? What software is installed? How old is the hardware? And also, how is it patched? What level of patching? We find that there's a lot of systems that we go and assess, there's a 2,000 server, there's 2,000 free server. So we work out and figure out which is a way forward from that perspective. And then the key one is understanding the dependencies, understanding what the application landscape looks like and what application's talking to what. Because the key thing this feeds into is actually the transition into Rackspace, where we lump those applications together and we take them from where you are today and then move them forward. So fundamentally, it breaks down to discovery and analysis breaks down into, three areas. It breaks down into its tools, its documentation, and it's validating what you've got. So the areas we look at is from an architectural feasibility side of things, we're going to help make the right choice of technology. You may want to go to public cloud. We're going to validate whether that application and that requirement from a business perspective is possible. From a business criticality point of view, we want to understand what's mission critical to the business. What SLAs do we need to assign to that? Also, we'd like to understand what's the security and compliance. No point putting sensitive data into public cloud. So let's understand what are the boundaries and the security that we need to put around that. Also, we've talked about this before, but the integrations, what are the key integrations? The performance and capacity we've touched on, and another key area is the consumption model. How are people consuming this? Is it a web application? Is it thin? Is it a fat client? But what we're trying to drive towards is a model where we're giving you a flexible target solution. In reality is, when you're running your data center today, one size does not fit all. We're not going to lump it in one technology stack, one solution. Reality is it's going to go across multiple. So if you see, I've broken every public speaking rule with this slide, so there's loads of animation. But reality is applications will fit different technologies and platforms. Some are going to be suitable to transform directly to public cloud. Some are going to target into a private cloud. Some we still see sitting on dedicated tin. They may, Oracle, to control the cost of licenses, there's still, a way to control that. Then there's some that you may be still running your data center today. You're got contracts running, and you want to consume a hybrid model. So effectively what you see here is a hybrid cloud across all the different areas, on-premise and off-premise. We're also going to give you a technology choice around VMware, OpenStack and Hyper-V. So all that discovery analysis helps narrow down to the right technology choice. But it doesn't stop there. Say we put it into private cloud, the Java web app. Once you transition in, we're going to give ability to transform over, because we know we want to reduce risk. That's the initial target, but I want to get this into public cloud in the next 6 months to 1 year following it transition into Rackspace. We also know that you might be phasing out your data centers, and you want to keep them in your data centers, consume a hybrid model, but then eventually you want to run out that data center contract and migrate that to Rackspace. So what I'm going to do now is hand over to Adam. He's going to talk through transition, and I'll rejoin to talk about transformation.
Thanks. Thanks, Simon. As the leader of the professional services function here at EMEA, I'm really excited to talk to you about what transition means to us and our customers, based on 2 years of quite hard graft with a number, and working very closely with a number of our enterprise customers. My goal here really is just to kind of share some of those aggregated lessons learned and thoughts, maybe give you some takeaways, some things to go consider when you're thinking about getting out of the data center business. I thought I'd start with the basics. I thought I'd start with really what transition is, because I think Simon alluded to earlier, transformation is different things to different people. But from a transition perspective, it's quite straightforward. Really what we're talking about doing is moving capabilities. We're talking about moving an operation from one place to another. And so it's much more than just a physical or logical move. And really what we're talking about doing is creating an overall operating platform. And actually, in the CERN talk this morning, he alluded to exactly the same thing. It's about creating the cultures and the processes that enable teams to work together and breaking down silos and making sure that one part of the business isn't running faster than the other. And success really means working together. I think the interesting thing is, if you read into what transition really is about, it's characterised by minimal changes. And the reason I raise that is that ultimately, when you're thinking about moving to a managed cloud or one of the models that Simon has suggested, there will be an element of transformation within your transition, because you ultimately will be making some form of fundamental shift, whether that be the way in which you deliver service or actually the technology in which it sits. And really, it's up to you. It's up to you to think about how much transformation you need right now and how much you want to defer. How much risk your business wants to take now, and whether you have the access to the right resources, whether that be scale or whether that be technologies. And then the other thing is, of course, the urgency within the business for the demand for benefit. What are the drivers, as Simon alluded to, and how quickly do you need to change? I'd like to just break down a little further what that really means to us in terms of work, resources and challenges that we face. Simon's going to go through the example with Lau at the end of this. Hopefully it'll make it a bit more real to you. But I thought I would, if you will, get into the gritty mechanics of it. As I said, that's what my team does on a daily basis. And we see transformation in three key elements. Each of these elements delivers a particular outcome towards generating that new capability. And they require specialist resources from the customer, from the customer's vendors in many cases, and their other partners, from Rackspace and from our partners. With regards to the outcomes that we're trying to achieve, really what we're trying to do is create, so for instance, in the top layer for the business, what we're trying to do is make real the conditions that allow the business to leverage the benefits of the solution. And that might be something as simple as aligning billing practices or ensuring we work with you to create the right controls around ordering IT in the new world. From an operations perspective, it's very simple. Are our teams service ready to run that workload in the new environment? And from a technology perspective, we have to stand up the infrastructure and we have to move the applications and the data to the new place. All of these things are interdependent. And then when you think about breaking up transitions into migration, into application bundles, into workload bundles, each of those bundles is interdependent. So what's really key here is that you have the right specialist resources talking to each other outside of silos with the right level of governance with project and program management. I told you I'd talk to you about some challenges, and we'll start from the top. And we'll start with expertise. The reality is that from an expertise perspective, our customers know their applications better than anyone else. Save for the exception of the odd legacy, but as a rule, customers know their applications better than anyone else. They know how to run them day to day. What we find from our customers, and the reason why they engage with us in professional services, is they don't understand the lens, or they don't feel they understand the lens or the nuance of what it takes to move that application from A to B, or what the impact to the businesses and to their operations might be. The second challenge is demand doesn't stop. Our businesses are constantly growing and constantly changing. You may need to fit, as Wilco from Exact alluded to, well, said this morning, through a 6-8 month transition program, their business is continuing to grow 50% annually. So how do they plan and deliver on a transition program that accounts for that growth and allows them to manage that and integrate that in? Because you can't stand still during transition. Your business has to keep moving, even though you're changing. The trick there is to plan for growth from the outset. To build a transition plan, to break it into bite-sized chunks. For those of you that saw Wilco's project plan stages. And what that does is that allows you to take pause, take breath, and work on those initiatives and those projects that ensure that your portfolio continues to be delivered as you move through to the new platform. And again, it's like magic. He said exactly the same thing that I was going to say today, which is it's really up to you to find that agility and that risk management balance. And it's a conversation that it's best placed between partners and not between vendors and customers, if I'm honest with you. And that's the real key here, is partnership. And then from a resources perspective, asking yourself and looking at whether you have the resources in the business to run the business and change the business and potentially grow the business. And for that, you need to understand what it's going to take to undertake that change. To work with someone who has the expertise and experience, who's been through it before. Because generally speaking, very few IT professionals will do more than a few data center transitions in their life. However, if you have a specialist partner who's done it several times over, you can leverage their expertise with your application knowledge to understand where those pain points lie. Plan for it up front, and then there are no surprises. Lack of information is always going to be a concern, but we know how to manage that. We're using tools, working on documentation, and working closely with application and infrastructure owners to have a complete vision of your estate, plugging ourselves in with change control to have an understanding of what's changing and where the risk lies, making sure that we're pragmatic where that risk is, and then obviously making sure that we have a number of tools in the toolbox that allow us a little bit of flexibility in our approach as things change. Estate criticality is not something that is exclusive to transition. Those of you that are in the data center business at the moment, that are running IT estates, face the estate criticality problem every time you want to put a major update or a patch into the system. Unplanned downtime is the biggest fear to your business. And as Wilco alluded to earlier, that unplanned downtime piece, when you're moving 200,000 customers from one place to another, is a real concern. And what's really required there is a finite, detailed planning exercise. You need to have the right exec sponsorship, and you need to have tight management of the transition process. Finally, the business demands these things yesterday. Procurement wants to take control because you've got a deadline and it's got to be met. Again, you need to understand those pain points, dive into those pain points, and then focus in on those, because that's where really when we talk about the risk and the agility balance, the risk and the speed balance, you don't want to smear that across your entire transition. You want to focus in on the pain points, and that's really what's going to give you the speed. The other thing that you want to do is you want to use repeatable and predictable processes, and you really don't want to, in my opinion, be using unproven or new tools that you're uncomfortable with. You want to be using the tools and techniques that your teams are familiar with and the experts that you're using and you're partnering with are familiar with. And of course, I've said it before and it's been said several times through the day, you need to avoid silos because there are so many different actors within the transition process. I've spoken about various migration approaches. Really, for Rackspace, there are 3 types of migration. The vast majority of our customers will choose to rebuild their applications and migrate their data across to their new platforms as part of transition. This is what Exact did, and as Wilco very flippantly said, all that was required was a DNS change. If only it was that easy, but ultimately there's a lot of hard work up front that goes into those kinds of estate transitions. But there are significant transformational benefits that you can receive from the outset. But it's not always the best fit. And like with the target estate and having a variety of proven platforms to land on, you need a number of different methods to get there. So we recognize that, and that's why P2V, V2V logical moves, or even physical lift and shifts, are also a viable option. But the challenge there is to recognise that when you're making a move like this, you are passing that transition risk onto operations. So I guess my final point from this is one size doesn't fit all. That goes for transition as much as it goes for the target. And as with Simon's slide, you need to take a workload-centric view of how you approach transition. So how do we go about solving for transition? I guess I'd start by asking, how many of you planned your journey today without knowing where you were coming from, where the destination was? You need all three aspects. It really is very excited, very easy, with the greatest respect to my colleague, to get excited about the future estate. All those nice new shiny toys and features that you can't wait to get your hands on. But spend some time. Spend some time to understand where you are now. Seek some expert advice on what that means to your approach to transition, because that journey will be specific to you. And I guess finally, just know that Rackspace, professional services team, my team, partners like EMC, we're here to help. We've been through this before, and we're here to talk about your challenges. And I'll just pass back to Simon. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. So I'm going to talk through transformation now. I can speak about transformation for hours, as Adam alluded to. So I'm going to keep this quite quick, because what I want to do at the end is allow 10 minutes for an open discussion around what we've discussed today. So transformation really is about journey, and it has to be phased. It's not something you pick up completely from a spoiled estate and I'm a service broker overnight. It doesn't happen like that. What we do is utilising, our skill sets, our experience alongside sort of EMC, is helping what is that transition and transformation look like? What does that future state need to look like? We also understand, certainly from my engagements around transformation, it means different things to different businesses. It means, okay, to certain businesses becoming more agile. Yeah, that's transformation. So for some other businesses, it's around contract flexibility. I had a 10-year contract. Certainly governments are used to 10-year contracts. Now I have a 3-year contract, or I consume some sort of cloud services that's billable on an hour. Wow, that's a huge change. And then really, transformation, a lot of people talk around technology transformation. I've, transformed from where I am today to access new technology. Also, the financial model of switching from a CapEx model to an OpEx model, where you've gone from owning your assets to now leasing them effectively. There's also a transformation around a new operating model. If we're offloading that operational burden from you running your data centers today, that frees up your team. That changes your fundamental operating model. But the key one, really, what we find is driving that stack consistency and standardization. A lot of people we find that are running data centers today do have some issues around standardization because they've probably grown rapidly. So it's really driving that consistency and providing a stable environment. So what I want to do is just got a couple of slides. I know Exact and Philips have been talking today. You've heard a lot of customer stories. But one you probably haven't heard of is Louse. So Louse is a financial group who is a leading provider of credit management services. They specialise in sort of recovery of debt, analytics and customer insight. Their strategic aim was to become a lot more efficient. They wanted to innovate. They wanted to consume leading-edge technology, and they were aiming to double. As you imagine, as the UK becomes more and more in debt, they're actually growing very fast. And the concerns from Gary Edwards, the CIO, is the current estate wasn't fit to serve the business needs. There's no way they can double in the next sort of 4 to 5 years. There's no way that they can drive efficiency. So basically, what we enabled them to do is overcome some of those challenges today. And some of the key challenges they had today was lack of time for development teams to work on actual applications. They were spending so much time on the operating model. So what we're able to do is align that sort of integrated service model with Rackspace. We're able to offload that operational burden that enabled the development teams to now focus on applications. So fundamentally what we've done is enable Laos to come from that sprawled estate and actually drive business agility. First of all, they recognise the operational efficiency, so that's great. Okay, now my dev teams are freed up to focus on applications because I want to automate them. I want to make them a lot more modular and sort of scalable. As part of that process, we're able to provide a standardized platform. That was a real key thing for Gary because they've grown very quickly as a business. They'd acquired business very rapidly. They've got all these different types of systems in different data centers. So he wanted to standardize that. We also made it simple and stable. You know, there was a lot of outages that they had within the business. And also, a key thing for them was to consolidate what they've got. So we're able to consolidate their 300 servers down to 100. We're able to migrate their 200 applications over to Rackspace, which helped reduce risk during the transition and transformation process. But one of the key things is now he's got flexibility to adopt new technology. He's now thinking about how do I consume public cloud? How do I look at new technologies around data? Because his whole business model is to get data into the business and analyze that as quick as possible. If that takes weeks and weeks to do that, that means they can't turn it around and realize the revenue benefits off the back of that. So when we look at the challenges we discussed earlier, going back to the slide where I talked about expertise, as Adam alluded to, you know, we've gone through this many times, and if you're running your own data centers, you know, you're only going to do it a few times in your lifetime. So access to expertise that can help you through that process around, you know, private cloud, hybrid clouds, you know, helping you consolidate what you've got. Also, it may be a stepping stone that you just want to do DR from day one. That may be a stepping stone. Also, we're going to give you a technology of choice. We're not going to narrow you down to a single technology. So we're going to give you a technology of choice across OpenStack, across VMware and Microsoft, and we're going to help you narrow that down. If you're running out, you know, you're running down your contracts and still need to maintain